Next, we have John Cotter coming back. You met him earlier on the panel. He's going to talk about accessible web development and test it with a keyboard. So I want you to look out. There's going to be a Vanna moment, so be looking for that.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Okay. Morning, everyone. So a web page is like a glass of milk. Before you take a sip, you can take a sniff, right? And that smell gives you a clue about how the milk is going to taste, right? And you can do a smell test on your web page as well, an accessibility smell test. In 10 seconds, with one simple tool, a tool you already have, you can get a sense of how accessible your web page is going to be. And that simple tool is a keyboard. So I'm John Cotter. I help North Carolina achieve digital accessibility compliance through teaching and testing. And I've been in web development for 22 years, and I specialize in web accessibility. So accessibility, it starts with one person thinking about another person. Can a person who uses a keyboard to navigate a web page use the thing I'm building? And so from one developer to another, this is why I think that testing with a keyboard is the most important thing you can do as a web developer for accessibility. It's the best bang for your buck, or maybe your bull. So when you test with a keyboard, you're helping a lot of people. According to the American Foundation for the Blind, they estimate that over 240,000 North Carolinians have some form of vision disability. And that number does not even include people who use a keyboard because of a mobility disability, right? They can't use a mouse, so they use a keyboard to navigate. So I looked through all the WCAG guidelines, and I found 14 that are keyboard related. So that's 28% of the WCAG 2.1 AA success criterion are keyboard related. 28%. Now, automated accessibility scanners, they find a lot, but they just can't find everything. They're great though, I use one. But the interactive stuff, like the stuff that you interact with a keyboard, a lot of that stuff gets skipped by these accessibility scanners. And in 2025, AI it's on its way to getting there, but today it's not there. It still needs a human to test your interactive content. And so if I haven't already convinced you that testing with the keyboard is the right thing to do, then I'll just go to my last resort, which is it's the law. You have to do it. That's what ADA and Section 508 are about. So find the keyboard issues before your users do, early, right? Before you publish, before you release to production. And to prove how big of an impact you're going to make, I actually had a package shipped here, and Liz is going to bring my package in, to put something visual in your mind about how big of an impact you're going to make on accessibility. I got this giant 6-foot keyboard to help you remember how important testing with the keyboard is for accessibility. Everybody convinced? I record that in your core memories. Put it here. Okay, so let's talk about how. How do you test with the keyboard? So these are the keys you're going to use right here when you're testing with the keyboard. Let's go through them. So the tab key, that's the primary way that a keyboard user navigates through an interface. When they hit that tab key, they stop at all the interactive elements. And when they get to an interactive element, they're going to use spacebar and enter to activate the control, activate the button, activate the link, follow the link. The arrow keys are used for changing selections within some controls, like drop-downs and menus and things. And then the escape key is used to dismiss or close things. So these are the primary keys that you need to use when you're testing with the keyboard. If you're testing with the mouse, you got one, click, right? But when you're testing with the keyboard, this is what you want to use. So congrats on passing Keyboard 101. Now, so let's talk about the three things that here's what you need to pay attention to when you're testing with the keyboard. Visual focus, focus order, and keyboard equivalence, okay? So number one, visual focus. Keyboard users need to see the focus. And when I say keyboard user, I don't necessarily mean blind. I don't necessarily mean, when I say keyboard user, that doesn't mean they have a vision disability. Some people might use a keyboard just because using a mouse is hard for them because of their disability. And they find that using a keyboard is easier. And so when they're moving focus through the page, they need to know where focus is at all times on all these interactive elements. So this is an example of the visual indication of focus. Here's 3 buttons. And that second button has a black outline. And it's real easy to tell that that's the button that has focus, right? Very easy to tell that the visual indication of focus is on this button here. And if I want to activate that button, I'm going to press spacebar or enter. This is a video of me tabbing through the NC.gov website. And as I tab through the page with the keyboard, you can see that focus moving. Right now it's going through the menus, and it's going to get to the search box and the search button. So it's that visual indication of focus. I can see it at all times as I'm tabbing through. As a mouse user, you can kind of just jump right to the middle, right? If you wanted to search, you just click in there and jump through. But when you're using a keyboard, you need to tab through all the elements to get to the thing that you want to interact with. So non-interactive things should not be in the keyboard tab order, right? Non-interactive things like headings, blocks of text, images that are decorative, and other hidden content. All this stuff, if you put this stuff in the keyboard tab order, you're actually slowing down keyboard users. They don't want to stop on these things. When they're tabbing through, they just want to get to the stuff that they can interact with. Now, you should also make the focus visually obvious with high contrast. And here's a little cow drawing your attention here. I have a milk theme, if you didn't notice. So make the focus visually obvious. So what good is the focus when you can't really see it so well, right? So here's an example of that. I got 4 buttons, and as the focus moves through these buttons, as I'm tabbing through these buttons, when the focus is on this black button and this dark blue button, it's really hard to see that focus, right? Probably with this glare in this room, it's probably even more difficult to see. But with the lighter background color buttons and a black outline, it's easy to see that. That's because they have a high contrast. So in WCAG 2.1, they added this guideline that actually gave you a number to target, a magic number. User interface components must have a contrast of at least 3:1 with adjacent colors, colors that touch. So this outline, this black outline, when you measure that against the background color of the button, those adjacent touching colors, you're going to use a contrast testing tool to test that. And when I tested this dark blue and the black, I got 1.6:1. So that's below that 3:1 required contrast. But with the lighter button, it measured 4.6:1. And that's why it's so much easier to see that visual indication of focus. Okay. Don't be scared, I'm showing you some code. I'm going to show a little bit of code today. This is a presentation for developers. I'm not going to show a lot of code, but here's a little bit. So developers, this is how you should be coding the focus. You're going to use this pseudo class called focus-visible. That tells the browser when this element gets focus, here's the styles I want to apply. And the style you're going to apply is that you're going to use the outline property and the value auto. So what this outline auto does, it does an awesome thing. It's kind of magical. In the Chrome browser, when you say outline auto, it says, hey browser, it's up to you how you style this. Just make it work, make it accessible. And the Chrome browser does an awesome thing, and it actually displays a black and white outline at the same time. So when the focus is on a button that's on a white background, you see the black outline. But when the button's on a black outline, you see the white outline. So it's never gonna be a problem. So this is a great solution that I encourage you to use for styling the visual indication of focus. All right, so the second thing you need to test with a keyboard is the focus order. Focus should move in an order that makes sense. Don't trap your user like this cow here stuck in this maze. The keyboard focus should move in an order that makes sense. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say you're faced with a paper form like this. Okay, how are you guys going to fill this form out? On paper, pen and paper. You're going to go first name, last name, email. Everybody's nodding their head. First name, last name, email. That's the way that makes sense, right? Now, if you were tabbing through a web form like this and the focus went first name, email, if you're a user who can't see and your screen reader says first name, email, your first thought is, what happened to last name? And then you shift tab backwards and you get back to the first name and you said, oh, I don't hear the last name. And then you tab forward and now you've wasted time and you start to lose trust in the accessibility of this website, right? You're actually losing your users' trust when you're not thinking about them and the way the user navigates a keyboard. So the way that I like to think about tab order is it's like an elevator, okay? Like this cow waiting for this elevator. So you're in the top of the elevator on the roof and you're going to the basement. And it's very linear, this tab order. As you hit tab, you're just going through down every floor, stopping on interactive elements. That's what it's like, an elevator. So developers, this is how you are going to control the tab order. You're going to let the code order control the tab order, okay? Let the code order control the tab order. So what I mean by that is, if you're testing with the keyboard and all of a sudden the tab order starts going wonky, the way to fix it is to move your code around. And so in my example here, I have I'm just moving the email text box below the last name, and that is fixing the tab order problem. Now, sometimes when you do this, when you start messing with your code tab order, you start to mess with the styles on the page a little bit, and things might get kind of messed up with that, and then you might have to go back and change the styles. But this is the way to do it, and it's another reason why you should be testing accessibility early in your process. If you wait till the end, you've got a lot more cleanup work to do, right? If you're like, okay, we're going to production tomorrow, let's send this thing off to Amy and John to test with their accessibility testing service. No, we're going to find issues and we're going to point them out, and it's not going to go well. So testing early with a keyboard is good. Here's another thing. Don't let the focus get trapped, right? So a keyboard trap, does anybody know what a keyboard trap is? A keyboard trap is like when you're tabbing through a page and you're kind of stuck in a certain part of the page and you can't tab past it, or it's just you're trapped. Your focus is trapped. And as a mouse user, you won't find these things. But when you're testing with the keyboard, if you find a keyboard trap, you will definitely come upon it. Now, I actually have a story. I was meeting with this developer named Loon, and she's an NC developer. And she inherited this legacy application, very legacy. That's the term. That means old. And almost embarrassing code, how old it is. So she inherited this code, and she was testing with the keyboard. I was like, yay. So she came to me, and she said, whenever focus got to this certain text box, focus would just kind of disappear. And so I said, okay, interesting. And it happened every time. So I said, okay, what's going on with this text box? She said, the text box is supposed to be read-only. You're not supposed to be able to edit it. You can't type in it. It's like a read-only field. But the developer didn't use the read-only attribute. What they did was they set the on-focus attribute and they called blur. Okay, if there's developers in the room, they'd be laughing. So when you use the on-focus function and you call blur, what's happening is you're just saying, okay, focus, get out of here. And so that works for a mouse user if you think about it, for a read-only field. The moment you click in that field, that on-focus event fires, it calls the blur, the focus leaves the field. And so that makes the text box read-only, right? But if you're a keyboard user, guess what? That's a keyboard trap, because you're going to be tabbing. The moment focus gets on that field, it blurs away, and it's gone. And you just can never get past that field. That's a keyboard trap. So don't let the focus disappear. That was kind of the same thing that was happening in that keyboard issue. It was like, was it really disappearing? Could I not see it? Was the styling bad? And sometimes it's very difficult to tell. So I have a super secret bonus tip. This is my industry secret. I kind of don't want to let this out because it's kind of protecting my career as an accessibility tester. So what you're going to do, developers, is create a live expression to watch this thing called document.activeElement, and then move the focus. So here's a demonstration of what this looks like. Here's how you set it up. In DevTools, go to console, create a live expression. That's that little eyeball icon. And then the live expression you're going to watch is document.activeElement. So document.activeElement, it's a JavaScript thing, and it tells you what element has focus at any given moment. Is that making sense? So at any given moment, you're gonna be able to watch what is the value of document.activeElement. And in my video here, I tabbed through all the elements on the page, and document.activeElement is constantly changing, telling me the value. And so in that problem with Loon and her text box, the moment that focus left that text box, we looked at document.activeElement. And guess where it was going? To the body. Because that's what Blur does. Blur sends focus to the body. So this is a great technique on how to troubleshoot focus issues. If you didn't follow along with that, that's okay. Go back and watch the video. We're going to post it online. Okay, the third thing you need to think about when you're testing with a keyboard is keyboard equivalence. Keyboard equivalence. And here's what I mean by that. Do it with a mouse, and now do it with a keyboard. Can you? Right? If there's a mouse way to do it, is there a keyboard way to do it also? And so here's 3 examples of common design patterns that often have this type of issue. Drag and drops, tooltips, and dialogues. So I think a lot of us have seen this drag and drop interface where you have a box with some items in it, and you have another box beside that. And then to make selections, you're moving an item into the other box, dragging and dropping, right? Dragging and dropping. And that's a very intuitive gesture for somebody with hands. Put something over here, take something over here, put it over here. Very intuitive, right? But how does a keyboard user do that, right? Remember what I said earlier. Accessibility is one person. It starts with one person thinking about another person. Can a person who uses a keyboard use the thing that I'm building? So if I'm building a drag and drop, I'm going to test it with a keyboard, and you'll find out whether you can do it or not. Now, the solution that I've seen a lot to these drag and drops is, it's probably clicking in your mind right now too, buttons in the middle, and so you make your selection, and then you push the button, and it goes over here. And then as long as your keyboard can navigate to the items and the buttons, make selections with the keyboard, then that works. And accessibility, a lot of times, the problems that you solve for one group of people can solve problems for another group of people. So if you think about, well, what about a user who does use a mouse, but they have trouble using the mouse? Maybe they have a dexterity issue, but the world is just made for mouse users, so they just kind of like it. They can kind of get by, but they might not have the ability to kind of click, hold, drag, release with the mouse. That's a pretty complicated gesture. And WCAG even has a guideline that says if you're doing stuff like that, you need to have a simplified way of letting those things work. And so now that you added buttons in the middle, it's just clicks, right? Click on the thing, click on the button, click on the thing, click on the button. So now tooltips is another one. Tooltips is a very mouse user thing, Tooltips are often triggered by hover. It's so mouse focused. And so then when you're one person thinking about another person, how does a keyboard user trigger that tooltip? Is it going to appear on focus? Is it going to appear when I activate the trigger? And if there's important information in that tooltip, how's that user going to see that information? How's the screen reader user going to hear that information? Now, me personally, I try to avoid tooltips. I think that sometimes interfaces that have a lot of tooltips are kind of a hint that the interface is not so intuitive. And some designer said, well, our users aren't figuring it out. Throw a bunch of question marks with tooltips in there. I try to avoid tooltips when I can. Dialogues is another big one that is a common design pattern that I often forget about keyboard users. So when a dialogue pops up, it's often unexpected, isn't it? You know, it's like you press a button and you're submitting your form and it says like, are you sure you want to delete? You know, are you sure you want to navigate away? These dialogues that force decisions. And so when that dialogue pops up, does it receive focus? Or does focus stay trapped in the background of the page? If a mouse user can't get to that background of the page while the dialogue is up, a keyboard user shouldn't be able to either. So these are just three kind of more complex design patterns. Now here's a little bit more code and an even simpler control. This, believe it or not, is a mouse-only button. It only works for mouse users or touchscreen users. And what the way it's been coded, the reason is because the way it's been coded using a div tag, and there's a JavaScript event called onClick that fires some logic. So when you click on this div, that JavaScript event fires, and it works. It works great for a mouse user. But div is a container element. It doesn't have the semantics that a button tag would. So if a developer builds a button like this, it's not going to work for keyboard users, and when you're testing with the keyboard, you're going to discover that Focus is going to totally skip this thing. So here's what you have to do to fix this. I'm not going to go into deep. I just want you to experience the complication a little bit. So in order to fix this, you got to add a lot of extra code. You got to add the tab index attribute. You got to add a role to tell the screen reader what is this thing actually? Is it actually a button? Is it a link? I don't know. And then you got to listen for the keyboard events with that on key up. So it's all this extra code that you have to add yourself. And why? Why? You just could have used the button tag. The button is naturally in the tab order. And when it actually naturally listens for keyboard events and fires click events. And then the button provides the semantics to the screen reader user. So this is kind of a funny slide that relates to that. So you might have heard people say no ARIA is better than bad ARIA. And I totally think that's true. So if you don't know what ARIA is a way to kind of extend HTML and add additional accessibility stuff. But it also provides things that HTML already provides. And a lot of times developers build these complex things where they using ARIA, but they could have just used native HTML. So native HTML, it's like a soft serve ice cream cone. And when you want something cold and sweet, it just does the job, right? But it's cheap. It's cheap. But ARIA is like an ice cream sundae gourmet and a waffle bowl with drizzled chocolate syrup and cookie sticks and sprinkles and mint and fruit. Very expensive, very expensive. Good, delicious, awesome, but very expensive. So I like to weigh the cost of these things. When you're writing your HTML, stick to native HTML, and it's going to cost you way less. If you start writing ARIA, suddenly you need to become an expert, or you need to go find one. You need to come to me, or Amy. So yeah, you really need to learn the ARIA specs and get in, and it's just expensive. It's a lot more work. Sometimes native HTML does the job. Now, if you are into building custom things, and you want to build really cool, custom, awesome, accessible, complex things, I love this website right here. This is the one resource I'm going to give you. ARIA Authoring Practices Guide. So go Google that. ARIA Authoring Practices Guide. And I'm going to press play here. It's going to scroll down the page. It gives you code and working examples and the keyboard keys that work with all these different types of complex controls: combo box, modal dialog, grid, menus, menu buttons, just all kinds of more complex stuff. Tabs, a tab structure is another one. There's no native equivalent of a tab. I don't know if you know, there's no native HTML equivalent to a tab. It's just buttons. But you can build a complex tab structure using ARIA. So anyway, I love this website, and when developers come to me and they say, hey, we built this thing, or maybe somebody built this thing for us, can you test it? How accessible is it? Well, first I'd say, yeah, go try it yourself with the keyboard. But then when I'm ready to test it, I'm going to test it with the keyboard. I'm going to use an automated testing tool, and I'm going to use a screen reader. And I'm going to get into the code. And then when I start to figure out what's wrong with it and start to offer remediation, how do we make this better? How do we make this more accessible? I like to look at this website and compare and say, okay, how did this website do it? And what can we take from this website? This website has a lot of credibility because it's made by the W3C. It's an authority. So W3C, those are the people who made the web standards, the people who made WCAG and ARIA. So thank you for thinking about your users with a disability. And if you don't remember anything I've said today, just remember that you're not done developing until you've tested with the keyboard. So try it today. When you guys go get back to your desk, go to some website you made, see if you can navigate it with the keyboard. Thank you. I'm John Cotter. Questions? Yeah, we can take some questions if there is any. Sure. And thank you, Vanna, for bringing it. Okay, Nicole.
Question.
I'll try to answer simply then.
Okay, one of your first slides said, do not include headers and paragraph text in your tab order. So I had thought that a screen reader, which is a tool that reads audibly the content of a website to a blind person, I thought a screen reader read using the tab order. And so if you exclude your headers and your paragraph text from the tab order, how does a screen reader know how and when to convey that content to the
I love that you asked that question because I can answer that. So a screen reader user, and thank you, Nicole. So the question is, how does a screen reader user, wouldn't they want headings and things like that in the tab order? How can they read it, basically? So when a screen reader user, they use a keyboard to navigate, for the most part, but their screen reader also lets them read line by line. I kind of glossed over that in my presentation, but so a screen reader user can jump to heading. They can press the H key. Over in this room over here, we have a screen reader that you can demo out. And so they can press the H key with their screen reader running and jump to headings. They can press some other keys to jump to different types of elements. And so when a screen reader user is kind of browsing a web page, like the first time a screen reader user comes to a web page, well, first of all, let me back up. The first time you come to a web page, what are you attracted to? What do you see? You see the headings. You see the big, bold text. And so that's what a screen reader user wants too, right? They want to say, okay, give me the gist. So they pull up a list of headings, they can jump to that heading, and then they can navigate from there. So they can use those arrow keys to navigate from there. And then when they want to jump to interactive elements, they can press the tab key and get to those interactive elements. So they kind of have a way to navigate between the interactive elements and the non-interactive elements. Now, a keyboard user who can see, those are the people that don't want non-interactive stuff in the tab order because you are slowing them down. Those are the people that just want the interactive content in. But the screen reader users, they have ability to get to all the static content, headings, paragraphs, things like that. Does that answer that? Okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Building, and whoever said they would move us out and move in, can't do it. I love this building. I am a trainer, and so not a developer, but a trainer, and so we use, a lot of times when we're trying to do web-based training, we use software like Articulate. And so my question is, I think it was a very interesting way to test your maybe training when I'm developing it, but I've noticed some of the training that that are sent to us from other agencies or so forth. I noticed that a lot of participants have an issue when they are, like it'll show that the training was complete, but really it's not complete because they were unable to click certain boxes because you can only do it with a mouse. And so is there a way, as a trainer that's developing training, is there a way for us to test that when we're using a software like Articulate?
That's an awesome question. Yes, you should also test that with a keyboard. I'm not experienced with Articulate, but guess what? There's somebody in that room who is. April, did you go find her?
I will.
Okay, yeah, April's got a demonstration over there of, I believe it's Articulate. And so she can definitely answer that question. But yeah, if there's something that's in your interface that a mouse user needs to click on, a keyboard user has to be able to activate that thing too. So it needs to be in the tab order, you need to be able to see tab focus, and you need to be able to activate it with the keyboard. And there's probably different ways to do that in Articulate. Last question? Sorry, yeah, if you could come up to the mic, thanks. Our YouTube viewers can hear you too.
Okay. Oh, I would prefer to not be on camera. But I won't sue. My question is, so I use Narrator on Windows.
What is it called?
Narrator, like
Narrator,
the built-in screen reader for
All right.
Windows. And so just for those that don't know in this room, Windows has Narrator built in, so that everybody has access to a screen reader that way. In the same way on Mac OS, there's something called VoiceOver. I'm curious to hear you speak about if the other screen readers that are out there, like JAWS, like paid professional screen readers, are they better for reasons? Are there other features that I don't have access to? Testing with Narrator alone.
Okay, yeah, great question. So, all right, so what was your name again? Kevin. All right, so Kevin uses this screen reader called Narrator for testing. It's awesome that you're doing screen reader testing yourself. So Narrator's built into Windows. There's other Windows screen readers, NVDA and JAWS. JAWS is one you have to pay for. NVDA is free. Macs have VoiceOver. Kevin mentioned it. So he asked, is Narrator, do I recommend Narrator? Well, I'm not a screen reader user, so I use it for testing. I don't use it for my daily life. But I would say the industry professionals that I've talked to, they say Narrator, not so good. So NVDA is an industry standard. That's what I use to test. In DIT, you can request that software. It's available. You just have to have the admin install it. If you're a Mac user, VoiceOver is installed on Mac. JAWS is probably maybe the most commonly used screen reader, but it's one you have to pay for. JAWS is awesome. So I would say JAWS and NVDA, VoiceOver, great screen readers. Narrator, I don't have experience with it. I've just only heard it's so-so. Maybe it's getting better. I don't know. Okay, thanks, Liz. Take my keyboard.